to talk about some of the challenges that we as arts practitioners, as arts managers, face in terms of when we're hiring, when we're applying for jobs, some of those pitfalls and mistakes that are really easy to make, right? So if you guys didn't hear about our first session, what our first session was really figuring out what those really bad mistakes were, right? So we had a few improv artists, and they acted out, over-eager candidates, desperate candidates, all of these different things, right? But what we wanted to do as well was we really wanted to make this action-based, right? So we decided to have the second part of the workshop, where we're hopefully going to come away with not only some best practices and tips for applications, so cover letters, resumes, interviews, all of those types of things, but also get an opportunity to work one-on-one if you brought your resume here today, to get some tips, to get some things where if it's not working, maybe they can work, and then to also speak in small groups about things which we might not be thinking quite so much about when we're thinking about applications. So I want to thank all of our panelists, who I'm going to introduce in a moment. Jess Lantos, who is the head of our board here, and as she so eloquently said earlier, LNI is a volunteer-run organization, and one of the great things that we have is our fellows program. So if you're interested in getting more involved in the arts, if you're interested in creating programming, like such as this program tonight, or hosting happy hours, culture clubs, which happen at museums, and all sorts of arts and culture events all over the city, please let one of us know. Can we just raise our hands again, the fellows? If you're a fellow at LNI. So, guys, Gail and Laura. So all of the fellows. And so let's start the conversation. So I'm going to introduce all of the panelists, and then I'm going to turn it over really quickly to Annie, who's at the end of our panel, to just tell you a little bit about this space and what makes this space so special. Okay. So to my left is Keonna Hendrick, who is an innovative museum educator and administrator who develops practical applications for big picture ideas and issues. She's currently the Teen Reviews and Critics Program Manager at Arts Connection here in Manhattan, and until recently held the position of Intern Coordinator and Senior Museum Educator at the Brooklyn Museum. So year after year, she's seen it all. She's seen the crazy resumes, she's seen the great resumes, she's seen everything. She's committed to exploring the transformative nature of art-centered experiences, promoting cultural understanding across communities, and engaging adults, children, and adolescents in personally relevant experiences. So please welcome Keonna. Next is Brynna Tucker, who is an entrepreneurship and career development specialist for artists, makers, and innovators seeking ways to develop strategies and personal and professional success. She's currently the Associate Director of Career and Professional Development at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, where she's been for about 10 years now. And she's been instrumental in helping a lot of young arts professionals, including some of our fellows who are here today. By cultivating relationships, creating educational programs, encouraging strategic dialogue, and developing resources, she helps people to find their way to a successful career doing what they love, which is something that I hope that we all want to do, right? So to be able to find a dream job that you love, there's an expression, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So they're here to help you do that. And last but not least is Annie Marlarkey, who works right here at Wix. She's a relationship builder, connector, and photographer with a gift of gab, and also an entrepreneurial spirit. What she does here is she manages strategic partnerships and programming for Wix.com in the New York City area, including Wix Lounge, a free co-working and event space for small businesses and creatives. And she's also a practitioner. She had a show here just last week on photography. Before we start our panel, I have a few questions for you guys. So who is here who wants to land their first job in the arts? So you've got a few people looking for their first job. Who is here who is looking to move to the next level? You already have a job, maybe a coordinator level, you're looking to move up to the next level. Okay, Okay, so a few others, okay, some repeats. Is there anybody here who came today because you're looking to become a leader in the field, gain more recognition, maybe speak at conferences? So we have one person there. And is there anybody who's looking to sort of change jobs, maybe move fields? Anything? Okay, so a few people overall. So one in the back too. So a lot of different things. Okay. So we're hoping today that by working towards these best practices for applications, we can help you guys to get further along those. So before we start the panel, I'm going to turn it over to Annie, and she's just going to tell you a little bit about what this space is and what Wix.com does.
Welcome everyone, good to see you all here. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background where you are right now. Wix Lounge is a completely free co-working space during the day, so anyone can come work for free if you're looking for a job. It's a really wonderful place. We have about 100 people every day working, and a lot of them have ended up collaborating on new projects, meeting each other, finding new opportunities. There's free coffee, free Wi-Fi, free Wix support, and if you guys don't know what Wix is, it's the easiest way to get yourself online and build out a website. And a lot of people use it to build an online resume. So it's basically the best representation of yourself online in your website. So when new people are searching for you, you want that to come up first. You want to show your best self and not your crazy party photos on Facebook, which of course none of you have anymore. So it's really wonderful. It's really easy to use. I'm happy to show any of you how to use it. And you can always book a 45-minute session Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and someone will sit down with you and walk you through everything you need to know. So that's just a little bit about Wix and the Wix Lounge, and now I'll pass it back to Michael.
Matthew? Oh, I didn't introduce myself.
I'm so sorry.
I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Matt Branch. I'm a fellow at Alnaya, and I'm also an academic programs coordinator at the Brooklyn Museum, where I teach a large majority of the college groups and work with the team to book most of the public programming. In my other life, I'm also an arts practitioner, a salsa dancer, ballroom dancer as well, so I have a little bit of that artist side. So our panel today is really about turning negatives into positives. So my first question for the panelists is, what are some of the issues, the most common issues you see when reviewing applications?
Hi everybody. Well, first of all, I'd like to say there are 3 words that I wish somebody had said to me when I was first starting out, and that is that your resume sucks. Because somebody needed to tell me that when I graduated from college. The problem with that is that usually what people are doing on resumes is pulling out what tasks and responsibilities they were in charge of doing from a past job. That's not useful unless you want to continue to do those tasks and responsibilities. So I think it's really strategic to think about what your skill sets are and speak in that type of language instead.
So just following up on that, how can people, I mean, these are things which are not easy to do, and not things that we do really often, like figuring out what our best skill set is. What can people do to decide what are their best skills and how they can put that into the resume?
Well, usually you have a list of tasks. It was probably in the job description for the job that you were hired for or are applying to. The difference between answering the phone and being a good communicator is the difference between a task and a skill. So think about the activities that you did, the responsibilities that you held, and the impact that they had. As you're applying for jobs, look at the job descriptions that you're applying to and see what the tasks are and what skills you have to make those things happen. It's more important to talk about what your capabilities are rather than what you've done before. Because if my responsibility was to vacuum, that doesn't mean that I enjoy it. It might mean that I'm good at it, but it might mean that I never want to do it again. And I'm actually very good at it, and I never enjoy doing it. So I don't tell anybody that. So I think it's really important to think about your ability to put a skill into place and what impact that skill can have.
I would also add that one of the things that I see so much is that the person really doesn't want to work there. They really don't want to work at the institution. They really don't want that position. They're just looking to get out of their current situation. And that is so clear in cover letters. And mostly because people tend to use their cover letter to regurgitate what's on their resume. And so it doesn't give me anything to bounce off of. I don't really know who you are, and I tend to hire for culture, not in training for skill. And so I think a lot of employers are going in that direction. And so it really is important. I would say, I think people tend to use that old template for the cover letter, like, oh, I'm very enthusiastic to, apply for this job opportunity at X institution. Here's my passion, blah, blah, blah. This is what I did. I did this here, I did that there. That's why I'm qualified, because I have this experience, I have this skill. And the skill is important, but it's how do you apply that skill to your larger career trajectory? And how does this institution, this position fit into that larger career trajectory? Because I don't necessarily expect that anybody's going to stay at that entry-level job for 20 years. But I do want to know that they're going to be around for, if I know this is a 2-year job, I want to think they're going to be around for that 2 years, and they're going to make the most of it because they understand that not only can they contribute to an organization, but that organization can contribute to their growth and their career trajectory as well. So communicating, I think that really boils down to communicating some type of passion for larger goals. Recently, at an organization I just started working at, I jumped right into hiring, and it was so evident. And even in those last rounds of looking at applications, that some people just use a template, and I wasn't interested because it's not a template type job. And to me, if you're starting that first footing of just recycling something that you use at another organization or at our competitors, I'm going to see that, I'm going to know it. I probably have a friend there I can call. And it's going to come off that maybe you're not going to be that interested in doing some of those more menial tasks day in and day out. Some of the things are less glamorous. But if you're really interested, I know that, hey, there's some place for you in this position to grow, and I might actually develop an opportunity for you so that you can make the position your own. But I think that's the biggest thing.
So we're talking a lot about really tailoring your application materials to the job, with working on the skill set and applying that to the job, and also showing that you really want the job and not doing that cookie cutter. So could you speak, just as a follow-up question, what are some of the things that tell you right off the bat that someone has a cookie cutter, either cover letter or resume? And I guess this is the harder question, what can we all do to really not have a cookie cutter, right? Because applying for jobs is not a fun process, right? Especially if you don't have a job and you're really trying to get a job, right? And you're doing cover letter and resume after resume. What are the types of things that you can do to show that you are really passionate and that it's not just sort of cookie cutter?
Well, I will say a lot of things I see on resumes, it's always, I'm a great communicator, I'm enthusiastic, I am responsible for this, and I think what you lose is that doesn't tell any sort of story. You can show you're a great communicator without ever saying you're a good communicator. By saying, I sent out this newsletter to 500,000 people and I got this response rate and then this increased revenue by 10% or something like that. I'm just saying you've got to show what you did instead of telling people what you did all the time. And I think that's like the one thing that people miss out a lot. And cover letter is the same thing. It's like, I'm interested in arts, this is what I've done. Without telling a story, you're going to know right away it's cookie cutter. But if you say, I went to 3 Elnaya events and this is what I've discovered about your organization and why I'm so passionate about it. And in the past, I've also worked on similar events with these organizations, and then you're crafting a story about what does this organization mean to you and why you're qualified to work there, and then people know that that's not a cookie cutter answer.
So in what you're saying, some of the things that you highlighted in that little snapshot, you increased revenue by X, you did that, you did Y. It's these deliverables, right? One thing that we talked about last week at the first part of the workshop is something that really stuck out to me, is that in transitioning from college or grad school to a full-time job, you go from being really sort of like a vessel of information, a consumer of information, to really being a service provider. right? And showcasing like what things did you do at this last job, right? So you increased revenue, you changed things, you made things better, right? And then what you said about the Oneida events, coming to the Oneida events, is that demonstrates commitment to the field, right? Because if you're going to Oneida events, you're not getting paid for those, right? Those are things that you're doing after work when other people are at the gym, when other people are going on dates. It shows that even outside of your 9 to 5, you're really invested in classical music or visual arts, and you're so invested that you're seeking out unpaid opportunities to really grow and develop professionally.
I think it's a lot easier to be less cookie cutter in a cover letter than it is on a resume. Because on a resume, it's very easy. You can just lie and tell them you've done all these crazy, amazing things. But really, with the resume, you're working with what you have. It's your past. It's the things that you've done. So what I normally look for is somebody with an interesting story, somebody who's piecing together parts of their lives to be have a little bit more depth than what I've said in my job description. Usually what I'm looking for, if your background is entirely in arts administration or the arts, and your work history is entirely in arts administration and the arts, and your education is there, then I also want to know that you're also into martial arts, or you're really into yoga, or you travel a lot, or you know another language. So think about what it's saying on the job description, make sure that that's clear, and then tell me something that makes you an interesting person as well. Usually a cover letter is where I'm looking for that. If I read a cover letter that says, I'm applying for this position, I read about it here, and here's my resume to apply for your company, I make a great member of your team, I already know you've used that to apply for all the positions, not just my position. So I know that you're using that over and over again and cutting and pasting. I think it's really important to try to connect yourself with the person who's reading it and think about what makes you the perfect candidate for that position, and also a really interesting person, somebody who has passion and interests and thinks outside of just the linear trajectory of your career path.
So interesting. So it seems like you're saying that by talking about some things that might be seemingly unrelated, like the martial arts or the cooking class, maybe through the passion that you have there, and you can apply that to the job that you're applying for.
I think you want to. If you read through your resume and you think you're exactly what it says in the job description, that might not be enough, because that means that you're capable of the job. And I'll give you a hint right now, so are a lot of people. So what is it that makes you connected, passionate, interested, intrigued? Those are the kinds of things that you can write into a cover letter. I always read the cover letter first, but I'm in the minority there. I always want to read a cover letter and hear somebody's story, see how somebody's connecting things. So if you're creating a resume, what you're working with is your past. That's all you can do. You can't make stuff up, even though that would be so awesome, because I would have the best resume. You're working with what you have, so think about what you have and how it tells the story of how you'd be the best at this particular position, and also how does it tell someone that you're passionate and invested in doing things that are within the cultural world that might connect with the person who's reading it.
I would also add, on a technical note, depending on where you're applying, if it's a really large institution or government agency, you want to use some of those keywords that are in a job description, because they might be using a scanner to weed people out first. And so that's just a technical thing to make sure you get your foot to the next step, but I think to jump off of what they were saying, aligning the professional with the personal is so important. You added thinking about like what's going on in your personal life to, give you a little bit more personality to, make that character on the paper kind of come to life a little bit. I would also say, I always ask this question, like, what has led to this person taking on this position? So think about your resume and maybe every opportunity that you've had or experience that you've had, how does that tell the story of it leading you into that next step? How is, the next time you update your resume, once you get that job, how is it going to tell the story of like, oh wow, this person was on a path. And sometimes that path was straight, sometimes it's a little bit unwieldy, but it makes sense. So think about that question as a way to kind of guide your story along. I think it would be really helpful. I also would say to really get to know the institution. I know you probably hear people say that all the time, but it's really important. You can tell when somebody does not know your institution does not understand the mission, and I'm not just saying like copying the mission and throwing it in there and being like, oh, I love kids too, I love to teach too, you know, but really thinking about like, why? You know, if it's, I'm just gonna make something up, like, if it's a teaching artist job at a nonprofit, then, you know, like, well, why are you doing that? Why do you want to be a dance teaching artist? You know, why do you want to work with this age group? Like, what is your purpose in this work? And how does it align with that organization's purpose? And you might have to, like, it doesn't mean you keep changing your purpose. It might